Welcome to Ceasefire, where civics meet civility and engagement meets empowerment. Ceasefire is hosted by former Boerne ISD trustee and owner of the Boerne Bookshop, Dale Adams, and by former Boerne City Council member and local insurance agent, Ron Cisneros. Ready, aim, ceasefire.
Good morning, Kendall County. This is Ceasefire. My name is Dale Adams.
And I'm Ron Cisneros.
And today's topic is using your voice.
To keep your voice.
Or as I say, use it or lose it.
Use it or lose it. Yeah, there's another one. Yeah.
I mean, everybody wants to think that they have their voice and somebody listens to them and they have representational voices somewhere. But it's not really that clear cut, is it?
No, it's not. And I think part of the problem is how we elect to use our voice, if we elect to use it at all.
Yes.
And the venues that we use, a couple hundred years ago when some people were just starting off in this nascent nation, we had the town square where people were actively engaged. Mm-hmm. Of course, there wasn't much to do. We didn't have cell phones occupying our time or Spotify or YouTube TV or anything like that. And so maybe the best form of entertainment was to go down to the local council chambers and watch some people, beat each other up. But
literally sometimes.
Yeah, literally, right. And so we didn't have as many distractions as we have today, but now there are all kinds of things occupying our minds, and I think probably the majority of Americans would like to think that they're involved, or maybe not involved, that they have an awareness of what's going on.
Well, everybody thinks they know what's going on.
Yeah.
I mean, even people that don't, they think that they know what's going on, and they do in their own world. Mm-hmm. But sometimes the way they're informed or the frequency that they check in on things don't really give them a good picture of what's going on outside their own community.
Right. So the result of that is that we get the lesser of two evil choices whenever we come to election times, and then we get the nasty elections like we just witnessed a few weeks ago. And what we've seen in that is that often, and it's not just political leaders, I want to state that right from the beginning, we see nastiness in the public
Culturally,
yeah. Right. And we sort of default to people allowing other people to speak for us.
Yes.
And again, not just the politicians, but what I would call local non-elected leaders.
Influencers,
right. Oh, I hate that word.
I actually came up with a term for that. I call it representational appropriation. Basically, people who want to be the voice for others.
Yeah.
And decide that they are, and go around and tell everybody that they are. And I think it's very powerful in any community of people. And I think it's particularly strong among women and minorities, simply because they have for a long time thought that they didn't have a voice. And so suddenly they have people saying that they're their voice, and they say, yes, that's my voice. But what they're doing is they're giving their voice to somebody else, and that person may not really represent their interests. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're seeing this with the Knicks fans. I mean, a lot of people look at what some of the Knicks fans did after games and whatnot, and they say, well, that's not me. Well, yeah, but that's your voice. As a Knicks fan, what's the vocal people and the forceful people out there are doing, are representing you. You may not like it, but it's happening. And I think that's happening in all kinds of groups all over the place.
I've been living on Alka-Seltzer and Tums since that game 4, and I just didn't want to talk about it.
Sorry.
You got to come in here and bring that up,
But I just thought about that because, we always talk about how fans act after games in different locations.
Right.
And some of them, they have great parades and this and that and the other thing. And some places, they go out there and they just tear up the city.
Yeah.
It's like, come on, people.
Something you were saying reminded me of something we touched on probably back in year 1 of the show, and we were talking about logical fallacies and biases. That might have been 2 separate shows, but people have a tendency to say, well, everybody agrees, or nobody likes that.
Yeah.
And we see that locally with Buc-ee's or with, like, no, nobody wants a Buc-ee's, or nobody wants a Costco, or nobody wants a bypass, right? And so there's this one person on Facebook or wherever, and they're making this argument that nobody wants any more apartments. And yet, I know for a fact that there's somebody out there, like my son, who's sitting there looking for that affordable apartment, right? Yeah. I was like, he'd rather be in Bernie, but nothing's there for him. And so, we end up with these voices, and I would strongly suggest that they're minority voices, not minorities as in minorities, like,
right. Their opinions are minority.
Opinion minority, minority opinions, suggesting that nobody wants X. Right. Yeah. And that just can't be true across the board.
Right. Yeah. That reminds me of something else. A lot of times people will have a conversation with you and they'll end it with saying right, because they're trying to elicit your agreement to whatever point they're trying to make or their point. You say, so this is what happened, and look at how that person was so abusive, right?
I'm tempted to say right now.
But the tactic is to get you to agree with them.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah. But I didn't say it. You said it.
Right.
Which is appropriate.
I said it again.
But when people say everybody hates the Buc-ee's, they're doing it for two reasons. One is to get everybody to say right. But the second, I think, is a little bit from fear, because they're not willing to just come out and say, I don't want a Buc-ee's. Mm-hmm. I don't want apartments, because that means that you might be isolating yourself from other possible opinions, and you may have to defend your opinion. And so I think it's done from 2 points. One, to garner support, but also from fear of setting yourself out there on your own. And the way we get sucked into it is that we let them do that, and we get away with it. We don't question that. And when somebody says, oh, everybody doesn't want a Buc-ee's, nobody raises their hand and says, well, actually, I'm sure there's somebody.
Yeah.
And we just sort of let it slide. And so that builds, and now it happens all the time, all over the place.
I think, too, that for those who engage in that sort of tactic or behavior, they also know that there are many of us who just don't want to get into an argument, or
non-confrontational.
We just don't want to have the confrontation. And for you or for me, well, I'll speak for myself. After 8 years of city council, and I hear somebody in the distance talking about the bypass, and I just turn around and go the other direction.
Yes.
I just don't want to get beat down about it anymore.
Yeah.
And I think we do that not just about a Buc-ee's or a bypass, but we do it on the state level. And I don't want to argue about property taxes, or we do it on the national level. I don't want to get into a discussion about abortion. And so we just walk away from the debate or the discussion, and other people come in, they fill that void,
right,
and they have the discussion for us.
Yes. And the people that do that are the ones that love the confrontation. Mm-hmm. They love the conversation and the debate, and the more confrontational, the better. So this goes back to something I've talked about before. Hayek talked about in his book, The Road to Serfdom. Government draws people that like to work with power. Mm-hmm. Just like car companies draw people who like to work with cars. Well, this public opinion and these speaking and these voices, these debates draw people that like confrontation, debate, controversy. And so their interest is in the act more so even than in the point of what they're talking about sometimes.
Right. Yeah. You know what's interesting? If you go and you look at polls on Americans and their views of what they want in representatives, what they want from their government, and what you'll find is often that they're looking for people who can work together. If you read the descriptions, what you're reading is a description of a statesman.
Yes.
Right? But then we get into the primaries and we see the exact opposite of what Americans are telling Pew or some other polling organization that they want in an elected official. And so I thought, well, that's interesting. Why is it that when we're being interviewed, we say we want X, but we always end up voting for Y? And I think if you look at the presidential elections, turnout in November, it's generally pretty strong. And you get outside of a presidential election, and the number of voters drop. And the number of voters in a primary election are always smaller than the number of voters in a general election. And so I think what happens is that in those primaries, you get those minority voices that we were talking about earlier. Right. They're a lot more motivated to show up and actually have a voice in the process. And then we end up with that scenario that, you know, where everybody's walking around with, well, gosh, I guess I'm going to have to choose between the lesser of two evils.
Yeah, yeah. And honestly, I think some of this comes from the fact that we spread everything out so much that people have a limit on how much political involvement they're willing to put in. And when the primaries are at the beginning of the year, the general elections at the end of the year, and then you've got another municipal election in the middle, they're like, dude, I'm not going to spend my whole year worrying about who I'm going to vote for. I'll go to one of them, but I'm not going to spend all my time with all of them. And that's one reason why I would like to see our elections clustered.
That's an interesting argument, Dale, because the argument for the various elections at different times is that people don't have the bandwidth to manage all of these different ideas, competing ideas and competing candidates, and so they separate these elections. But you're arguing that we don't have the bandwidth to deal with it throughout the year. It's better to just get it done at one point.
And I think the concept on the bandwidth is, and I agree, I will go through the appellate courts and all those positions, and I'm like, gosh, who are these people? The problem isn't that there's too many, it's that it burns you out. Yeah. So I think that spreading out of the year leads to burnout. I think the clustering them leads to maybe being overwhelmed. But I think we can deal with that, honestly. And with that, we are going to take a break from this very quickly, and we'll be back. This is Ceasefire with Dale and Ron. Bernie has its own bookshop. In fact, it's called the Bernie Bookshop. Hi, I'm Dale Adams, inviting you to get lost. Get lost in a good book in our relaxed and casual atmosphere. We have a wide and eclectic selection in the Bernie Bookshop. We pride ourselves on finding what you are looking for. We do author meet and greets, host writing workshops, and can connect you with a good book club. And your young ones will absolutely love our kids section at the Bernie Bookshop. And while we want you to get lost, we're easy to find, as we're in the heart of Bernie, at the back of the Richter Tavern building. We are the Bernie Bookshop. And welcome back. This is Ceasefire with Dale and Ron. We're talking about using your voice, how you can use your voice, and other people that really love using your voice.
Yeah. So I want to drop some names here for a moment. And before I do, I want everybody to recognize that I'm not making a us versus them argument or a right versus left, but I'm going to highlight some names of some representatives, U.S. representatives, that some of them are not there anymore, but they're recent representatives. And I think this will highlight the point, and I want to talk about these people for a moment and how they, because some of them I think are just incredibly dumb, right? And again, I'm going to pick on the right, and I'm going to pick on the left.
You have a wide collection there to pick from.
I do, yeah. And so they're dumb, and I think most people are wondering, well, how the heck did they get into power? But here are some names, and I know I'm going to upset some people.
Then why are you doing it?
Oh, because it needs to be said. It's fun, yeah.
It does need to be said.
Hey, and if somebody doesn't like what I'm about to say, call Barron and get your own radio show. Right?
That's right.
So here we go. And I'll start with the R's first. Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Taylor Greene, George Santos, Lauren Boebert, and then Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on the left, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, and Jasmine Crockett.
You know, what's interesting is that when you read those two lists, I have different reactions for both sides. Mm-hmm. On one side, I'm thinking, yeah, they are so dumb. And then for the other side, I'm like, that is so embarrassing. Mm-hmm. So I should be embarrassed for all of them.
Right.
And I am, actually. But as you read the list, it was interesting that in my head, my feelings were, derision for one side and embarrassment for the other side.
Well, and here's what ties all of them together, because I think most people had the same reaction, right? Yeah. And maybe our Republican listeners at first might have been offended, like, hey, Matt would have made a great attorney general. He got railroaded, right? And so, but whether they're effective or not, what they're really good at is rewarding the voters who show up. The voters who pick them get everything back in return that they were won. They get that combativeness. They get the, the anger, the friction. Because I think this goes back to what I was saying about primary voters, right? They're the most vocal. They're the ones that are the most likely to show up. So they're the ones that are asking for that friction.
I think you're overgeneralizing a little bit. I mean, I think you're right that they have a certain constituency that do that. But I vote in the primaries, and I'm not asking for that. And yet I still get it because I'm overwhelmed.
Yeah.
So I think your point is valid, but I wouldn't say all primary voters.
Oh, no. I wouldn't argue that either.
Okay.
I mean, in some of the primaries that we've had recently, I wasn't really happy with the choices. And so I think even the selection process, now the Republican Party or the Democrat Party are looking for those sorts of candidates.
Yes, I think so.
Right.
They like combativeness.
Like, what's his name in Maine? Plattner.
Yep.
I mean, my gosh, like right now, with, looking backwards, we're sitting there scratching our heads thinking, how did they get to him?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, because he was the sort of guy that was going to get their voters out of their homes and voting. So you're right. I don't want to engage in that generalization. I definitely agree with that.
But you're right that primaries are much more partisan and polarizing.
And I think that we have an incentive in our primaries now, and again, I don't want to be too general here, but outrage sells.
Yes.
Right. And so the parties know that, and so they're giving us the outrageous candidates. Right. If they felt that bipartisanship and community would sell, then they would give us that.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
And right now, we've got this perverse relationship where they're selling us outrage, we're buying it and asking for more of it.
So let's go positive then.
Okay.
So how do we get our voice out? What behaviors or activities or things can we do that will get the everyday person's voice to be more prominent in our community?
Well, I'll probably sound like a broken record here because I tend to advocate for being engaged in the local level. And I've told many people over the years that nobody actually knows on the national level how many laws we have. We've talked about that on this show. And there are so many that I don't think they can all be enforced. But the local laws can be. And we have some silly laws on the local level too, but I think they're in many ways more impactful to us because we have a closer relationship to our mayor and council and our city manager than we do our senator, our house rep, or our president. And so I would think the answer to your question is the first step is be involved, be engaged on the local level.
Yeah.
Know who your representatives are. It's shocking to me how many people in the city of Boerne do not know which district they live in. They can't name their councilman. They don't vote in those elections. I would say that's the first step. And you don't have to go, I'm not going to sit here and tell you. I wish everybody would at least once go to a council meeting or a school board meeting. I'm not going to say that you have to do that. But having a voice beyond just Facebook, I think, is important.
Yeah.
Whether that's in the chamber or a PTA or in your HOA, just stepping up and speaking. And speaking, it doesn't have to be bold. It doesn't even have to be brave. Although I would say there's an element of bravery because of what you and I were just discussing in the first segment about, people fearful. So you don't have to be the elder statesman. Just speak.
So you're saying that I should go to the county commissioner's court and tell him how much I hate that fence again? Is that what you're saying? I should just go do it, even if I'm not a statesman about it?
Have you done it?
I've done it once.
You've done it once?
Yeah, back when they first put it up.
And I'm actually glad you brought that up because I've heard many, many people complain about it, but I've only heard a handful of people actually go and do something about it, say something.
Yeah. Along those lines, I think there's also things that we can do even in our closer community and just our conversations, I think a lot of times when we have conversations just with our friends and colleagues and stuff, we don't question them as much. You know, like when somebody says, oh, nobody likes Buc-ee's. You know, in your conversations, well, yeah, maybe. There's probably a few people that would help. You know, there's some teenagers that could use the jobs or something like that. So just engage a little bit more constructively in your day-to-day conversations. Mm-hmm. And one thing that I learned, I read a slogan from some marriage counseling thing. Not that I went to it, but I saw it somewhere. And it was about paraphrasing what other people say. Mm-hmm. So when somebody says something to you like, nobody likes Buc-ee's, you can come back and paraphrase and say, oh, so you think everybody's opposed to Buc-ee's. And when you paraphrase something, it takes that concept and puts your voice behind it, and it's going to be different. And one thing I have found when I paraphrase people is that frequently that's not what they meant. And so I find that paraphrasing in conversations really helps engage in deeper conversations, because then you start to understand what the other person is learning from you, and vice versa. And so I think paraphrasing in conversations is a powerful tool, and I think a lot of people would gain a lot from it, because both it would encourage them to speak their voice, and it would also get other people to understand their voice a little bit more. Another thing I think people could do is they could define their words a little bit better. A lot of times we talk about things we don't like. Nobody likes Buc-ee's. Well, what do you mean by Buc-ee's? Mm-hmm. Now, it's a particular store, but maybe what you're really saying is nobody wants any big corporations in Bernie, which I think is one of the things that they are saying. And so I think if we define things a little bit better, it would help in the conversation, because then people will have a common background. I'm going to bring up something here that's not related to that, but it's a definitional thing that I think people might understand a little bit, and it's the man-woman definition. And everybody can roll their eyes and think about it. But it used to be saying, people used to say that a man was a social construct. Woman's a social construct. And I think that I didn't used to believe that, and I don't really still believe that, but I think a lot of people do believe that. And that's why we see a lot of these people saying, oh, anybody can be a man or anybody can be a woman. And I guess where I'm going with this is the words have meaning, but that meaning has changed in our society, even if it hasn't changed for us. And so when I hear somebody talk about a trans woman or trans man, I get confused, because I'm like, which way are you going and what do you mean? And none of it makes any sense to me. But if you say that that is a male woman, I think that makes sense, because male is a biological term and woman supposedly is a social construct, which I don't really believe, but society is forcing me to acknowledge that that is the common definition now. Uh-huh. So if people talk about a male woman or a female man, then it makes sense to everybody, because everybody can relate to that. So that's sort of a very radical point about definitions that I'm trying to make. But people can talk about definitions when they talk about corporations as to nonprofits. Nonprofits are cool and wonderful. Corporations are evil and bad. Well, they're the same thing. They just have a different tax designation.
Right.
And so I think definitions matter a lot. And I think we don't use our ability to articulate our definitions as well as we should.
Right.
So
I think, yeah, wow.
I've had that in the back of my head for a while.
And it's actually interesting. I don't know that I can get there with you on a woman being a construct. I would say that with lady, and I often catch myself, because I'll use that term like, hey, ladies, or, good morning, ladies. And then I think to myself, well, I don't know. She's definitely a woman, really. Maybe when I get to know her better, I can decide if truly a lady. That I think is
That's
a construct, right?
Yeah.
But I think the words are important, and that kind of, or the definitions, as you were saying, that's important. But also going back to what we were saying earlier, it's just recognizing before we speak that we are I can't get mad at somebody for trying to usurp my voice if I do the same thing that they do and just assume that everybody thinks as I do, right?
Yes,
and so I have to be careful and catch myself when I say, yuck, nobody likes okra.
Yeah.
Because I think what I'm really saying is, why would anybody like okra?
And that engages in a conversation, because somebody could speak up and say, I love okra.
Yeah,
I don't, but
yeah, I don't know who that person is. Well, my wife loves okra. I don't understand.
Good for her. I'm glad somebody does.
Yeah,
because somebody needs to.
Yeah, we have to go to a couple of different restaurants once in a blue moon so that she can get her okra fix, and I have to go sit at another table. Yeah, but
I don't quite go that far, but
all right.
Another thing I see is that I would like to see people approach their conversations and their discussions from a point of love rather than a point of conflict. And that's a whole conversation, I know, and we don't have time for that. But I think if you approach things saying, hey, how can we get along? How can we improve whatever the situation is for everybody? Mm-hmm. Then I think you'll make a lot more progress than just saying, oh, that person's terrible. I don't want to do what they want.
Right.
And I think if we sort of check ourselves a little bit on that. With that note, I am going to bring out a book very quickly. We have it at the Bernie Bookshop. It's called The Bill of Obligations, 10 Habits of Good Citizens. And it is all about engagement and your voice. Things like be informed, get involved, stay open to compromise, remain civil. All kinds of obligations that we have as citizens.
Oh, that's a different book than what I thought it was, because I thought that was the book my mom wrote when I was in middle school.
That's a good book, too. But we don't have that one. This one we have it is by Richard Haass. We have it at the Bernie Bookshop. And with that, we will wrap it up this week. Thank you for listening to us, and we will see you next week. If you missed any of this, you can go to bernieradio.com and listen to our podcast or any of the other great podcasts.